The young woman had always lived a quiet life, tucked away in a small town where everyone knew everyone else. She worked at a modest cafe during the day, serving coffee and pastries with a warm smile, and in the evenings, she would retreat to her little apartment where she could practice her music in peace. Music had always been her escape, the one place where she could truly be herself. She had a small keyboard and a collection of old sheet music that had been passed down from her grandmother, who had once been a musician herself. The walls of her apartment were lined with books, photographs, and a few certificates from local talent shows, dusty now, but each one a reminder of her small victories and hidden potential. Life had been simple and she liked it that way. She enjoyed the quiet mornings when the town slowly came alive, and the evenings when the streets emptied, leaving only the sound of distant cars and the occasional bark of a dog. She had friends, though not many, and a few people who truly believed in her talent, encouraging her whenever she felt unsure. But deep down, she wondered if her music could ever reach beyond the small boundaries of her life. One sunny afternoon, the town was buzzing with excitement. A wealthy businessman, known for hosting grand events and lavish parties, was visiting. Word had spread quickly that he would be attending a local cultural gathering, a celebration that brought people together to enjoy music, food, and laughter. The cafe where she worked was near the main square, and she could hear the murmurs of the crowd growing louder as the event started. It was not unusual for her town to have small gatherings, but this was different. The presence of someone so influential made it feel larger, more important, and a little intimidating. She was busy serving a table when she noticed a sleek black car pull up in front of the square. The man stepped out, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, exuding confidence and authority. People whispered his name, some staring in awe, others exchanging excited glances. He moved with a sense of purpose, scanning the crowd with sharp eyes, and it was clear that he expected attention wherever he went. She tried to focus on her work, but her curiosity got the better of her. There was something magnetic about him, something that made people pause and take notice. As she wiped down a table, she heard her name being called. She looked up and saw one of the event organizers gesturing for her to come over. Confused, she walked toward them, her heart beginning to race. She had not expected to be involved in this grand event. The organizer smiled nervously and whispered, "The millionaire wants to see you perform. He heard you play and insisted." She froze, the words sinking in. Her hands trembled slightly as she tried to process what was happening. Perform? In front of him? In front of the entire crowd? The idea made her stomach twist with nervousness. She had played at small community events at the cafe, and even at the local library once, but never in front of a crowd this size and certainly not someone so influential. Her mind raced with doubts. What if she made a mistake? What if her hands shook and she played the wrong notes? What if she embarrassed herself in front of so many people who had high expectations? Despite her fears, she knew she could not refuse. The organizer gently led her toward the main stage, where a small crowd had gathered. She could see the millionaire now, standing tall, watching her intently. His expression was unreadable, but there was a hint of curiosity in his eyes. He had noticed her before, perhaps hearing about her talent from someone who believed in her potential. He had the power to make anyone perform, and it was clear that he wanted to see what she could do. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. Her fingers itched to play, and for a moment, she imagined herself back in her apartment, surrounded by her music, where she felt safe and confident. But this was not her apartment. This was a stage, with bright lights, the crowd waiting, and the millionaire expecting a performance. She stepped closer to the keyboard that had been set up on the stage, feeling the cool keys under her fingers. Her heart pounded, and she could hear the faint hum of the crowd, the chatter of people curious about what was about to happen. As she looked out, she noticed a mix of expressions on the faces of the audience. Some were intrigued, others skeptical, and a few were smiling encouragingly. The energy in the air was palpable, a mix of excitement and tension. She realized that this was her chance to show what she could do, to let her music speak for her, even if her voice wavered or her hands shook at first. She closed her eyes for a moment, taking another deep breath, and let herself imagine the familiar comfort of her practice space, letting the rhythm of her heartbeat sync with the rhythm of her music. The millionaire stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. He gave a slight nod, a signal that she was expected to begin. She swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on her, but also a flicker of determination. She could feel the support of those who had believed in her all along, and she knew that this moment, though terrifying, could change everything. Her fingers hovered over the keys for a second longer than necessary, testing the familiar feel, and then she began to play. The first notes were tentative, almost fragile, but they were enough to catch the attention of the crowd. The melody started softly, delicate, each note a careful step into the unknown. She could feel the eyes on her, the collective breath of the audience waiting, and the presence of the millionaire who had compelled her to stand here. At first, doubt lingered, threatening to take over. She almost considered stopping, thinking perhaps this was too much for her to handle. But then, she reminded herself why she had started playing music in the first place. It was not for fame, not for approval, but for the joy and expression it gave her. She let that thought carry her forward, letting her fingers move more confidently across the keys, the melody gaining strength and clarity. The crowd shifted, leaning in, some nodding their heads to the rhythm, others exchanging surprised glances. The millionaire watched silently, his expression slowly changing from curiosity to interest. He was used to people performing at his events, but there was something different here, something raw and authentic that could not be bought or rehearsed. The young woman, though nervous, was giving a part of herself to the audience, and it was undeniable. The music filled the space around them, weaving through the crowd, reaching even the furthest corners of the square. For a moment the world seemed to disappear. There was only her, the music, and the connection forming between her and everyone listening. The fear that had gripped her moments ago began to fade, replaced by a quiet confidence. She realized that she had the power to captivate people, to move them with something as simple and honest as her talent. The crowd, sensing this shift, began to respond, their attention fully captured by the unfolding performance. As the last notes lingered in the air, she paused, letting the silence settle before the inevitable applause. The moment felt surreal, as if time had slowed down. The millionaire's eyes met hers once more, and for the first time, there was a smile, a subtle acknowledgement of the talent he had forced her to reveal. The young woman, breathless but exhilarated, felt a surge of pride and relief. She had stepped out of her comfort zone, faced her fear, and shared her gift with the world. The beginning of something extraordinary had just started, and she could feel it in every beat of her heart, every note that had passed through her fingers. The moment she stepped away from the keyboard, the crowd's applause washed over her like a warm wave. Her hands still trembled slightly, and her heart raced, but there was a strange sense of relief that she had actually done it. The first barrier was broken, but the tension did not disappear. She knew this was only the beginning. She looked toward the millionaire, who remained watching with a faint, inscrutable smile. It was clear he had not expected this, and that made her even more aware of how much pressure she was under. She stepped off the small stage, trying to calm her breath. People began to murmur, some leaning toward each other, exchanging impressed looks, while others were still uncertain. The young woman felt the weight of every gaze, some curious, some doubtful, all silently judging whether she could sustain what she had just begun. Her palms felt clammy as she adjusted the strap of her instrument and tried to steady herself. The reality of performing in front of a crowd, especially one that included someone so powerful, hit her fully. She felt exposed, vulnerable, but also strangely alive. The millionaire moved closer, his presence alone demanding attention. He spoke in a calm but firm voice, drawing her eyes to him. "That was a start, but I want to see the full measure of your talent," he said. There was no malice in his tone, only expectation. The way he said it left no room for hesitation. The young woman's stomach churned. She had hoped the first few notes would be enough to impress, but now he was pushing her further, compelling her to show what she could really do. She stepped back onto the stage, her legs feeling heavy under the weight of nervousness. The keyboard felt familiar beneath her fingers, yet every touch seemed amplified by the crowd's scrutiny. She took a deep breath, trying to block out the murmurs and shifting eyes. Her mind raced, reviewing every lesson, every practice session she had ever had. Doubt clawed at her mind. What if she faltered now? What if the notes she had memorized suddenly vanished under pressure? The fear was tangible, almost suffocating. A few moments passed before she pressed down the first key again. This time, she let herself breathe into the music, easing the tension slowly, note by note. Her hands still shook, but the trembling began to carry emotion instead of fear. The soft, tentative melody she started with grew bolder, richer. She was telling a story without words, each note a fragment of her journey, her quiet life, her dreams that had always felt too big for the small world she lived in. The crowd began to notice the change. The initial curiosity shifted into a deeper attention, eyes widening slightly, heads tilting, some whispering to neighbors in awe. She could feel the energy of the people responding to her music. Their attention bolstered her confidence, but it also heightened her awareness of the stakes. The millionaire, standing slightly apart, arms crossed, watched intently. She could feel the pressure emanating from him, the silent expectation that she would rise to the occasion, that she would not just play, but make the music live. Her fingers danced across the keys, no longer just following practice routines but improvising, letting her feelings guide the notes. Memories of quiet evenings alone, lost in melodies, and small victories from local performances surged in her mind. Each memory lent strength to her performance, creating a raw, authentic expression that could not be planned or forced. It was as if the music was no longer just something she played, but something that was speaking through her. The crowd was shifting. Faces that had been skeptical now leaned forward, captivated by the sudden depth and emotion in her performance. Some had their phones out, capturing the moment, their astonishment evident in quick, whispered remarks. The murmurs of admiration grew louder, blending with the sound of the notes filling the square. The young woman felt a new surge of energy, realizing that her talent was not just for her own enjoyment, but something that could touch others, even in ways she had never imagined. But along with the growing recognition came a new kind of pressure. The millionaire's gaze was unrelenting. He had the power to change lives, to open doors that she had never dared approach. His silent judgment pressed on her, a reminder that this performance was more than just music. It was a test, a chance that might not come again. She felt the stakes keenly, knowing that the next few minutes could define the perception of her abilities for everyone watching. She allowed herself to feel the music fully, letting it flow through her body and voice. Her initial hesitation melted, replaced with a focused intensity. Every note she struck was deliberate, infused with emotion, carrying the story of who she was, where she came from, and the dreams she harbored quietly. It was not about perfection anymore. It was about truth, about connecting, about revealing a piece of herself that had long been hidden from the world. The audience responded in waves. Whispers turned to exclamations of delight, heads nodded in rhythm, and some began clapping softly, hesitant at first but growing more confident as the melody continued. She could feel the shift from polite interest to genuine admiration. The music had become a bridge between her and the listeners, an invisible thread linking hearts and emotions. She realized she had the power to move people without words, simply by allowing herself to be seen and heard. Every so often, her eyes met the millionaire's. There was still intensity in his gaze, but also an unmistakable spark of surprise. He had expected competence, perhaps even skill, but he had not expected the depth, the passion, the authenticity that she brought to the stage. His posture relaxed slightly, and for a brief moment, a small, approving smile touched his lips. The young woman felt a mixture of relief and renewed determination. She was not just performing to meet his expectation anymore. She was performing to show herself, to honor the journey that had brought her to this moment. As she continued, the crowd became completely absorbed. Every note, every chord progression resonated, drawing listeners in, holding them captive. the atmosphere shifted from casual interest to intense engagement. She noticed that some people had tears in their eyes, moved by the sheer honesty of her music. Others were smiling, caught in the beauty of the unfolding performance. The young woman could feel her own emotions rising, matching the intensity of the music she was creating. Fear and doubt were now replaced by exhilaration, a connection she had never experienced in front of an audience this large. By now, her initial nervousness had transformed into an almost meditative focus. She lost awareness of herself as a separate entity and became one with the melody. Every subtle movement, every variation in tone, was an expression of her inner world. The audience could sense this authenticity, responding instinctively to the emotion conveyed. Their energy fed into her performance, creating a dynamic exchange that lifted the music to heights she had never reached before. The millionaire, standing silently, seemed to be reassessing his expectations. He had seen many performances in his life, some technically flawless, some impressive in showmanship, but few had carried the depth of feeling and honesty that this young woman now displayed. She noticed him subtly nodding, his expression changing from evaluation to appreciation. This recognition, though quiet, bolstered her resolve. She was no longer just performing under pressure. She was commanding attention through her talent. As the music swelled, she felt a sense of liberation. The fear of judgment melted entirely, replaced with the pure joy of expressing herself. The crowd was now fully engaged, moving and reacting as if they were part of the performance themselves. Every note she played was met with responsive energy, creating a shared experience, a moment of collective awe. She realized that this was what she had been missing, what she had always hoped for but never dared to believe could happen. By the time the final notes lingered in the air, the crowd erupted in applause, some standing, some clapping enthusiastically, others simply gazing in stunned silence. She stepped back, her body shaking from the intensity of the moment, but her heart swelling with pride. She had faced the pressure, the fear, and the scrutiny, and she had emerged not just unscathed but triumphant. The music had spoken for her when words could not. The millionaire approached quietly, his earlier intensity replaced with visible admiration. Without a word, he extended his hand, a silent gesture of acknowledgement. The young woman realized that this moment had shifted everything. The initial compulsion to perform, the fear, the doubt, had led to a revelation not only for the crowd but for herself. She had discovered a depth of talent and courage she had never fully recognized, and the impact of her performance would be felt long after the applause faded. This was only the beginning, and she could feel it. Life, as she knew it, had changed in ways she had never imagined. The young woman took a deep breath, feeling the lingering warmth of the crowd's applause. She stepped back onto the stage, her fingers brushing against the cool keys of the keyboard. The initial wave of fear had passed, replaced by a determined focus. She could sense the anticipation in the air, the crowd waiting to see what she would do next. The millionaire stood slightly apart, his sharp gaze fixed on her, his presence both intimidating and motivating. She knew this was the moment where she had to show not just skill, but the essence of her talent. Her first notes were soft, deliberate, almost hesitant, as she tested the waters again. But this time there was a difference. She was no longer just performing to appease the audience or meet expectations. She was performing to express herself, to tell her story through music. The melody started to flow naturally, each note carrying a piece of her life, her dreams, and her emotions. It was as if the keyboard had become an extension of her own heart, translating thoughts and feelings into sound. The crowd leaned in, sensing the shift in energy. There was a quiet awe, a collective pause as they listened intently. People exchanged glances, surprised at the depth and emotion pouring from the young woman. She could see faces lighting up, eyes widening, some smiling, others nodding slowly in appreciation. The initial curiosity had transformed into admiration, and she felt a renewed sense of purpose. Her fingers moved more confidently now, tracing patterns and rhythms that she had practiced countless times, yet adding subtle improvisations that made the music unique. She allowed herself to be carried by the melody, each chord resonating with the emotions she had held inside for so long. The notes danced in the air, weaving a story that words could never fully capture. She was no longer aware of her nervousness. It had melted away, replaced by a deep connection with the music and the audience. The millionaire's expression had softened slightly. He had seen many performances before, but there was something different here. Something authentic and raw that could not be manufactured. His eyes followed her every movement, his face a mixture of surprise and admiration. He was used to people performing at his events, some technically skilled, others flashy and confident, but few had shown the vulnerability and depth that she now displayed. His presence, once intimidating, had become a silent acknowledgement of her growing command of the stage. She could feel the audience responding to every note. Some were swaying gently, caught in the rhythm, while others held their breath, captivated by the emotion in the performance. The young woman realized that music was more than just sound. It was a bridge connecting hearts and minds. She had always loved playing for herself, but this was something entirely different. It was a shared experience, an unspoken understanding between her and everyone listening. With each passing moment, her confidence grew. The initial fear of judgment and the pressure of the millionaire's expectations no longer weighed her down. Instead, they had transformed into motivation, pushing her to reach deeper into her talent. She began to explore more complex melodies, layering notes and rhythms in ways that surprised even her. The music had taken on a life of its own, evolving with every movement of her hands, every beat of her heart. The crowd's energy surged with her performance. Applause began to ripple through the audience, hesitant at first, then building as people became fully immersed. Some were recording the moment, others simply watching in awe, but all were connected to the performance in some way. She could feel their collective admiration, and it fueled her determination to give everything she had. The music was no longer just hers. It belonged to everyone present, a shared expression of emotion and beauty. Her eyes occasionally met the millionaire's gaze. He was no longer just observing. He was engaged, recognizing the power and authenticity of her talent. There was a subtle shift in his posture, a hint of respect and approval. For the young woman, this silent acknowledgement was enough to strengthen her resolve. She was not performing for validation anymore. She was performing to embrace her own potential and to connect with those who believed in the music as much as she did. As the melody swelled, she allowed herself to improvise more freely. Her fingers danced across the keys with increasing fluidity, weaving intricate patterns and harmonies. She could feel the music rising within her, building in intensity and emotion. Each note was deliberate, yet spontaneous, a reflection of her inner world and the journey that had brought her to this stage. The crowd was visibly moved, their reactions mirroring the crescendos and delicate moments of her performance. She remembered the quiet nights spent alone, practicing, dreaming of a day when her music might touch someone beyond the walls of her apartment. Those memories now infused her performance with authenticity and depth. The music was not just a skill. It was an extension of her life, her experiences, and her passion. She could see the effect it had on the audience, and it gave her a profound sense of fulfillment. Every note, every chord, every subtle pause carried meaning and emotion. The millionaire, watching closely, seemed to reassess the young woman's potential. He had compelled her to perform, expecting perhaps a simple display of competence. But what he was witnessing was something far greater. Her talent was not just technical. It was expressive, powerful, and capable of moving people. The depth of her music and the authenticity of her performance were undeniable. His initial intention to challenge her had inadvertently revealed the full measure of her talent. The young woman, fully immersed in the moment, felt a sense of liberation. The fear that had once held her back had vanished completely. She was no longer constrained by self-doubt or external expectations. The music flowed naturally, effortlessly, as if it had been waiting for this exact moment to come alive. The audience was captivated, their attention unwavering, their reactions a testament to the emotional resonance of her performance. As the final notes approached, she felt a mixture of exhilaration and serenity. The music had reached a peak, a point where every element aligned perfectly. Her fingers struck the keys with precision and emotion, leaving a lingering echo that filled the space around her. The crowd responded instantly, a wave of applause and cheers that seemed to stretch endlessly. She stepped back slightly, breathing heavily, feeling a sense of accomplishment and awe at what had just transpired. The millionaire approached once again, his expression transformed. There was admiration in his eyes, a recognition of talent and courage that could not be ignored. He extended a hand, not in command, but in acknowledgement. The young woman felt a rush of emotion, realizing that she had not only met his expectations but had exceeded them in ways that neither of them could have anticipated. The performance had become a turning point, a moment where fear was replaced by confidence, and doubt was replaced by self-belief. The crowd continued to applaud, their energy still vibrant, their faces reflecting amazement and appreciation. Some were whispering to each other, sharing their awe, while others simply remained silent, caught in the lingering magic of the music. She felt a profound connection with every person present, understanding that her talent had the power to touch lives and inspire others. The experience had transformed her, revealing a strength and potential that she had only glimpsed before. As the applause gradually faded, she allowed herself a moment to absorb everything. The fear, the tension, the pressure, all had led to this extraordinary experience. She had faced the challenge, embraced the opportunity, and revealed the depth of her talent in a way that was undeniable. The millionaire, once an intimidating presence, now stood as a silent witness to her triumph. The young woman realized that this was not the end, but the beginning of a journey that could change her life forever. The young woman felt a surge of energy as she prepared to continue her performance. The crowd's applause from the previous section still lingered in the air, and she could sense their anticipation. Every eye in the square was on her, but instead of fear, she felt a growing determination. She had stepped onto the stage nervous and uncertain, but now, every movement, every note, was infused with purpose and confidence. The keyboard felt alive beneath her fingers, responding to the emotion and intensity she poured into it. She began softly, letting the music breathe, creating a gentle melody that drew listeners in. The first few notes were deliberate, allowing the audience to settle into the performance and feel the mood she was conveying. Slowly, the melody built, adding layers of complexity, and each chord resonated through the square, capturing attention and imagination. The young woman felt a thrill run through her as she realized how connected she was to the people around her. It was no longer a performance she was giving them. It was a shared experience, an exchange of energy and emotion. The crowd shifted, leaning forward, some nodding in rhythm, others quietly whispering to neighbors in awe. People had expected a simple display of talent, but what they were witnessing was something far more profound. The music was not just skillful. It was heartfelt, moving, and genuine. Her fingers danced across the keys, sometimes gentle, sometimes strong, as if painting a picture with sound. The expressions of the listeners reflected the journey of her music. Curiosity, surprise, admiration, and eventually, pure amazement. The millionaire stood quietly, his arms folded, watching intently. He had seen many performers, but there was something different here. The young woman was not performing for approval or recognition. She was performing because the music was a part of her. It flowed through her naturally, unapologetically, and the authenticity of her expression had captivated him. He shifted slightly, a subtle nod acknowledging her skill, but more importantly, the passion she poured into every note. Encouraged by the reaction, she began to explore new territories in her music. She experimented with tempo, shifting from soft, flowing passages to bold, dynamic crescendos that demanded attention. Each transition was seamless, and the audience followed, held spellbound by the emotion that radiated from her performance. She could feel their energy, feeding into her, giving her confidence to push further, to reveal more of herself through her music. The young woman's heart raced, but not from fear. It was exhilaration, the pure thrill of creating something that could touch so many people at once. She had always dreamed of sharing her music, but never imagined it would have this immediate impact. The crowd was no longer passive. They were participants, reacting instinctively to her every movement, their collective admiration creating a powerful energy that enveloped the square. Every chord, every note was magnified by their attention, and she could feel her talent reaching heights she had only dreamed of. As the music swelled, she allowed herself to become fully immersed, losing track of time, the crowd, and even the millionaire's presence. Her fingers moved with increasing fluidity, effortlessly combining technique and emotion. Each melody became more expressive, each rhythm more compelling. The young woman felt a sense of liberation, realizing that she was not bound by expectation or fear. She was free to express herself completely, to let her talent shine in its purest form. The audience began to react audibly. Some gasped in surprise at the skill and emotion. Others clapped in rhythm, their excitement growing with every passing moment. The young woman's music had captivated them entirely, creating a shared moment of awe and admiration. The energy in the square was electric, and she could feel it pulsating through her veins, pushing her to explore even more intricate passages, more emotive phrasing, more daring expressions of her talent. The millionaire's expression was changing as well. He had expected a performance, perhaps even an impressive one, but the depth and authenticity of what he was witnessing was beyond his expectation. Her talent was not just skill. It was a story, an emotional journey that resonated with everyone present. For the first time, he saw the full extent of her potential. The young woman had taken a moment of pressure and transformed it into something extraordinary, capturing the hearts and minds of those around her. She began to incorporate subtle improvisations, adding nuances that made the performance uniquely hers. The audience responded instinctively, their eyes widening, mouths slightly open in awe. They were witnessing something rare, a display of true talent that could not be learned or replicated easily. Every note, every pause, every crescendo told a story, revealing layers of her personality, her experiences, and her inner world. The young woman felt a profound connection to everyone listening, a realization that her music had the power to move people in ways words never could. The energy of the crowd intensified. People were no longer just listening. They were feeling, experiencing, and sharing in the journey of her music. The applause became more spontaneous, some standing in recognition, others whispering to neighbors in disbelief. Cameras and phones captured the moment, but no device could fully convey the depth of what was happening. She could see the expressions of those around her, their emotions mirroring the peaks and valleys of her performance. Encouraged by the response, she pushed further, exploring the full range of her abilities. The music became more dynamic, oscillating between gentle, tender moments and powerful, dramatic passages that commanded attention. The young woman was no longer just performing. She was telling a story, painting vivid images with sound. The crowd was captivated, drawn into the narrative she wove through her notes. Every gesture, every movement of her fingers, seemed to echo the emotions she wanted to convey. The millionaire took a step closer, visibly impressed by the transformation unfolding before him. He had compelled her to perform, expecting perhaps a simple display of skill, but now he was witnessing a revelation. The young woman's talent was undeniable, her passion unmistakable, and her ability to captivate an audience was extraordinary. He had pushed her into the spotlight, but what she had delivered was far beyond anything he could have imagined. The young woman, feeling the energy of the moment, allowed herself to take a deep breath and fully release her emotions into the music. She let go of every doubt, every fear, and every expectation, focusing entirely on the story she wanted to tell. Her fingers moved with incredible precision and feeling, creating a performance that was both technically impressive and emotionally powerful. The audience was enraptured, their attention unwavering, their admiration growing with every passing second. As the performance reached its climax, the young woman poured every ounce of her talent and emotion into the music. The notes soared, resonating with a power that seemed to fill the entire square. The crowd erupted in audible gasps and applause, some standing in sheer amazement, others cheering spontaneously. The young woman's eyes glistened with tears of joy and relief, realizing that she had achieved something remarkable. The pressure that had once weighed so heavily on her had been transformed into a moment of triumph. The millionaire stepped forward, clapping slowly, a rare smile spreading across his face. He approached the young woman and extended a hand, acknowledging not just her talent, but the courage and authenticity she had displayed. The crowd continued to cheer, the excitement and admiration palpable. She had not only met expectations, she had shattered them, leaving everyone, including the millionaire, truly astonished. As the final notes lingered in the air, she felt a wave of accomplishment and pride. The performance had been a turning point, a moment where fear had been replaced by confidence, doubt by self-belief. The crowd's reaction, the millionaire's acknowledgement, and her own sense of achievement combined to create an unforgettable experience. She had proven to herself, and to everyone watching, that her talent was real, powerful, and capable of leaving a lasting impact. In that moment, the young woman understood that her life had changed forever, and the possibilities ahead were endless. The young woman stepped back from the keyboard, her body still trembling with adrenaline. The applause of the crowd was deafening, a wave of appreciation and awe that seemed to fill the entire square. She could hardly believe what had just happened. What had started as a moment of fear and uncertainty had transformed into an unforgettable experience. She had given everything she had, and the reaction from the audience and the millionaire was more than she could have ever imagined. The millionaire approached her slowly, his expression a mixture of admiration and respect. He extended his hand, not in a commanding way, but in acknowledgement of the courage and talent she had displayed. She took it, feeling a mixture of relief and pride. This gesture was more than just recognition. It was an invitation to a new world of possibilities, a world that had seemed out of reach until this very moment. People in the crowd continued to cheer, some clapping vigorously, others whispering to neighbors in disbelief. She noticed that many had tears in their eyes, moved by the authenticity and passion of her performance. The realization hit her. Her music had reached them, not just through skill, but through the emotion and truth she had poured into every note. It was a profound connection, one that went beyond applause and admiration. The organizer of the event came forward, smiling brightly. "That was incredible," they said. "Everyone is talking about you. You have a rare gift." Her heart swelled at the words. She had always believed in her talent, but hearing it acknowledged so openly, in front of so many people, was exhilarating. It was a confirmation that her dedication, her practice, and her quiet belief in herself had all led to this moment. The young woman felt a mix of emotions. There was pride, certainly, but also a sense of disbelief. She had faced the pressure, the fear, and the expectation of a powerful figure, and she had emerged stronger, more confident and recognized. The experience had changed something fundamental within her. She realized that talent alone was not enough. Courage, determination, and authenticity were equally important. This performance had been a test, a challenge that she had not only met, but had transformed into an opportunity for growth. The millionaire spoke again, his voice calm but firm. "You have something special. Few people possess the talent and courage to captivate an audience like that. I want to support you and help you reach your full potential." His words were unexpected, and they carried a weight that made her heart race. She had never imagined that a single performance could open doors to opportunities she had only dreamed about. The prospect of guidance, mentorship, and support from someone with such influence was both thrilling and humbling. The young woman took a deep breath, trying to absorb the moment fully. She had always been cautious, hesitant to put herself in the spotlight, but now she understood the importance of taking risks. The initial compulsion to perform, which had filled her with fear, had become the catalyst for a transformative experience. She had learned that sometimes, being pushed out of one's comfort zone could reveal strengths and possibilities that were previously hidden. As the crowd began to disperse, many approached her, offering words of praise and encouragement. She smiled, feeling a sense of warmth and connection that was entirely new. People wanted to know more about her, to hear more of her music, to support her in her journey. She realized that her talent was not just a personal treasure. It had the power to touch and inspire others, to create shared moments of beauty and emotion. This understanding filled her with a sense of purpose and responsibility. The young woman's thoughts turned inward, reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this point. The quiet evenings spent practicing, the moments of self-doubt, the small victories in local competitions, all of it had led to this stage, this performance, and this recognition. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for those who had believed in her, for the experiences that had shaped her, and for the opportunity to finally share her talent with the world in a way that felt complete and authentic. The millionaire spoke once more, suggesting ways to nurture and expand her talent. He offered connections to professionals, opportunities to perform in larger venues, and support for her artistic development. She listened carefully, her mind racing with possibilities. The path ahead was uncertain, but it was filled with potential. She understood that this was only the beginning, a first step toward a future that could be extraordinary if she embraced it fully. In the days that followed, the young woman reflected on the experience repeatedly. She replayed the performance in her mind, remembering the fear, the pressure, and the transformation that had occurred on stage. She realized that the performance had been more than a display of skill. It had been a turning point in her life. She had discovered the power of courage, the importance of authenticity, and the impact of sharing one's talent with the world. She began to plan her next steps carefully, thinking about how to develop her skills further, how to reach wider audiences, and how to maintain the connection with the people who had been moved by her music. The recognition from the millionaire and the audience had opened doors, but it was her dedication, creativity, and persistence that would sustain her journey. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, ready to embrace the challenges and opportunities ahead. The young woman also recognized the importance of staying true to herself. The pressure of the moment had forced her to perform, but the authenticity of her talent had captivated the audience. She understood that her voice, her music, and her unique perspective were her greatest assets. No matter how many opportunities arose, maintaining that authenticity would be key to her continued growth and impact. As she continued to reflect, she felt a sense of empowerment. She had faced fear, stepped into the spotlight, and transformed a challenging situation into a moment of triumph. The experience had not only showcased her talent but had also strengthened her confidence and belief in herself. She felt ready to take on new challenges, to explore her potential fully, and to inspire others with her music. The young woman's life began to change in small but significant ways. Invitations to perform at local and regional events started coming in, and people who had witnessed her performance spread the word about her talent. Social media buzzed with clips and comments from the performance, and her story began to reach beyond the immediate community. Each opportunity brought new experiences, challenges, and learning, but she approached them with a renewed sense of confidence and authenticity. Through it all, she remained grounded, remembering the journey that had brought her here and the lessons she had learned from stepping outside her comfort zone. She continued to practice diligently, refine her skills, and explore new dimensions of her talent. The recognition and support from the millionaire were valuable, but she knew that her growth depended on her own commitment, creativity, and perseverance. The young woman also began to inspire others. People who had followed her journey, witnessed her performance, or heard her music shared their admiration and encouragement. Her story became a testament to the power of courage, dedication, and authenticity. She realized that her talent could not only enrich her own life, but also touch the lives of many others, creating moments of joy, inspiration, and connection. As time passed, she embraced her evolving role as a performer and musician. She continued to explore her artistic potential, collaborate with others, and seek out opportunities to share her music with wider audiences. Each step of the journey reinforced her belief in the importance of courage, authenticity, and perseverance. The experience with the millionaire and the audience had been a pivotal moment, but it was only the beginning of a lifelong pursuit of excellence and meaningful expression. The young woman often reflected on that day, remembering the fear, the pressure, and the ultimate triumph of her performance. She understood that life's most transformative moments often come from unexpected challenges and the willingness to take risks. The journey had taught her that true talent shines brightest when combined with courage, authenticity, and a genuine connection to others. She carried these lessons forward, knowing that they would guide her in every performance, every decision, and every step of her evolving path. In the end, the young woman had not only discovered the full extent of her talent, but had also found confidence, purpose, and a deeper understanding of herself. The experience had been life-changing, opening doors and creating opportunities she had never imagined. She knew that her journey was only beginning, but she faced it with optimism, determination, and the unwavering belief that her music could touch lives and inspire others. The applause, the admiration, and the recognition had confirmed what she had always known deep down. Her talent was real, powerful, and capable of leaving a lasting impact on the world.